I saw on some of the news channels today, the descriptions were police in riot gear, right? As if it's the police's fault for wearing riot gear. Earlier today at the University of Texas, police and protesters clashed, officers trying to enforce a dispersal order. Again, they're trying to enforce the laws. They're being called to the scene. They aren't making the laws. They didn't ask to be sent there. Things got ugly. Flashbangs were used. Then students surrounded officers. And then even followed them off campus when they were leaving, apparently trying to intimidate them. But here's the part of the story not enough people are talking about, right? Police officers have already been injured in Boston and New Orleans, and many more have had dangerous items thrown at them, being fought with. We keep hearing that these are mostly peaceful protests, whatever that means. Think about it. Let's say people get hurt or shot at a nightclub. Do we say the people, the club goers were mostly peaceful? And the theme of the police supposedly cracking down unfairly is really taking hold among many in the media.
The disproportionate, highly militarized response from law enforcement.
It just looks like very heavy-handed tactics for a protest.
Of course, the police are the villains, right? To the protesters who are certain they're righteous. They have the right to take over private property, to vandalize, to wrestle and resist police when they're told to leave. The officers are not at these schools on a whim. Universities have called for help, including, by the way, vandalism and theft. Dozens of reports of incidents of threatening, taunts, and harassment of students, faculty. Look, being cop is always a risky job. They have to face danger to serve. But this seems so avoidable. And by the way, saying that doesn't mean there can't be or aren't incidents where the police go too far, or that there are no legitimate complaints or grievances with a response. There are. But isn't it interesting that so many in the media keep telling everyone not to judge the protests by the incidents of violence? Doesn't represent the whole. And yet when it comes to far fewer incidents like that with police, that's not the standard. Joining us now, Lieutenant Sean Sticks Larkin, retired Tulsa police sergeant and co-host of On Patrol Live on Reels with me. He is also the host of Crime Cam 24/7 on Fox Nation. All right, Sean, take us into the mind of the officers arriving at these campus scenes. My guess is they're not happy to be there.
No, I assure you, there's not a single officer in this country that wants to get called out to one of these protests going on one of the college campuses. And what people also need to understand, besides the officers being there, have to deal with a lot of childish young adults, honestly, is they're being pulled away from other assignments in the communities where they're also needed. Things that involve violence, drug dealing, those type of problems that go on, domestic violence and so forth. And so to come out here to these college campuses from one coast to the other to deal with a bunch of people that simply just don't want to follow the rules and the laws that are in place, it's very, very frustrating.
And they're almost forcing the cops to get physical, right? When they start grabbing their arms together and not releasing it when the cops come up, you're immediately making cops get physical.
Not just in this circumstance, Dan, this is what happens in policing overall for the most part, minus that small, tiny percentage. If people follow the lawful orders by the police, we don't want to have physical contact with you. If you do what you're asked to do, you're going to go about your way. You are never going to have a police officer put his hands on you. And if they would just do that, and all these protests that we're seeing disperse quietly as they're told to do, I assure you the police would never have to put their hands on them, deploy flashbangs, deploy tear gas, and so forth.
But it is increasing the chances of injuries for both the cops and the protesters.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And just as you mentioned, the top of this right here, there are officers that are getting hurt, in the line of duty because they have people, again, that are not following the lawful orders by the law enforcement, by what the school administrators are asking these students and other outside protesters to do. it increases the likelihood of, one, arrest for these people, two, expulsion, from the schools for some of these students, and injuries to both students and law enforcement alike.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.